A year ago, perhaps more, I sat with you, Cecily, and your parents around the table in your home to select the verses you've just read so accurately and so beautifully this morning. And I remember thinking before I reached your home, what am I going to say to Cecily, whose bat mitzvah falls on Shabbat B'Midbar? The first 4 chapters of the book of Numbers are not exactly the most uplifting in the Torah. They do not offer us the excitement of the plot line of a story. They don't include universal moral laws that we can apply to our own lives today. They're about names and numbers. They deal with the geometry of the holy, the pattern of encampments around the tabernacle, and they focus on the ancient hierarchy that existed among the Israelites, the priests and Levites, the firstborn with their special privileges over and above the rest of the people. I remember asking you, Cecily, with some hesitation, do you like numbers? And your eyes lit up as you told me that maths was your favorite subject at school. And this week, when we were chatting, you added that you like patterns. And I thought how appropriate that your bat mitzvah falls on the Shabbat that we are when we're beginning to read from the book of Numbers, and that your portion is preoccupied with those themes, numbers and patterns. You made 2 very important points in your Devar Torah earlier. One, that women are not mentioned once in your parashah, although they are the mothers, the sisters and daughters of the men who are counted. They would have cooked the food, done the washing, sewn the clothes, raised the children, and probably much more within the encampment. And secondly, you mention the significance of the firstborn child, the firstborn male child in ancient Israel, who according to the Torah belonged to God. After we had spoken about the absence of the women in your parashah, I came across this poem by Lisa Levine, a reflection on these verses from the beginning of Numbers. It's called Forgotten. I wondered, on the day of the counting, why my husband and his brothers and their sons were numbered among the stars of heaven, but my daughters and I were not even noticed, doing the washing, baking the bread, raising our children. I wondered why I, the womb that held them, was forgotten. The principles of organization are value-laden, says Beatrice Lawrence in her commentary to these chapters in which your Torah portion is found. They count only able-bodied men of fighting age in the initial census, and they divide the Levites into units with unequal privileges concerning the holy sanctuary. And yet, this surging mass of refugees who have made their way from Egypt as former slaves and must endure a 40-year march through the desert are all traveling in the same direction. They are going to the same place. So why are some counted and some left out of the census? And why do some have greater responsibilities than others? Why do we need to count people? Surely our attitude should be to ensure that everyone counts. My colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg, reminds us in his commentary to these verses of the experience of youth leaders who are constantly counting out numbers. And Cecily, you might recognize this from summer camp that you attend in the United States. Some of us may have led trips with young people, and we always have to make sure that no one is left behind on a bus when it's time to get off, or left on the platform when the rest of the group has boarded a train. Counting people shows that we care about them. The 11th century biblical commentator Rashi, in his commentary to the very first verse of the book of Numbers, asks why, when the Israelites had already been counted on previous occasions, does God ask for a census again? And he responds with these words, "It is because of God's great love for the people that God counts them, kol sha'ah, every hour." Many years ago, soon after it opened, I visited the National Holocaust Centre and Museum, which is in Nottinghamshire, just outside the city of Nottingham. The brainchild of Stephen and James Smith and their mother Marina, who had visited Yad Vashem, Israel's national Holocaust memorial. And they, non-Jewish, created a place of learning and memorial just outside Nottingham. As part of the tour, Stephen Smith himself took us into one of the rooms at the centre and took out a large book. This book, he says, has 6 million dots on its pages. And as he opened the book, he said, each dot represents one individual murdered during the Shoah, a child, a woman, a man. No other way of absorbing that number of 6 million has ever had such an impression on me, because I realized that each of those dots imprinted on each page of this vast book represented a life, a whole world, a unique, irreplaceable, populated world, linked by myriad threads to other such worlds. Those last words come from a beautiful piece by my late colleague, Rabbi Sheila Schulman, who continues, when someone dies who has been a part of our life, there is a rent in the universe, like a star vanishing, but that like a star vanishing, that world leaves ineradicable traces in us as a star does in space, so that we mourn, but we remember, and we know that there will be a living trace of that person in our consciousness always. Counting, then, is so much more than ticking off one name after another. It is recognizing that each human being in this world is irreplaceable and unique. It is acknowledging in some way that just as God shows love for every individual who walks on earth, so too we, created in God's image, must hold on to the belief that everyone in this world is precious. Everyone deserves to be held in dignity, to be believed in and noticed, whatever their office. That is the love that is evoked by the prophet Jeremiah in the verses which you, Lindsay, read earlier. Ve'ahavat olam ahavtich, al kein meshachtich chesed, eternal love, I conceived for you then, therefore I continue my grace to you. God's love for Israel in the wilderness, that early courtship of a newly freed people, is the basis of God's gracious kindness to us in times of exile and suffering. Cecily, it has been a great pleasure for both Leah and me to get to know you over this past year and to appreciate your intelligence, your thoughtfulness, your wisdom, and quiet confidence. It is often the case that those of us who are petite and quiet, who are not quick to raise our voices, but wait and take our time to add our voices thoughtfully to assess a situation, are sometimes overlooked and not counted. But in your understanding of those verses in which God tells Moses, "For every male firstborn is mine," you reveal not only the special place of the eldest in a family, but you broaden your understanding to include the eldest female as you are. Perhaps, though, we are all firstborn, all consecrated to God, all holy, cherished, and unique in God's eyes, and all worthy of God's love and of each other's honor and respect. I hope, Cecily, that as you continue into our Kabbalat Torah class next year, join our trips to Amsterdam and Prague, get counted as you get on and off the tram or bus, you'll bring your lovely sense of humor, your thoughtfulness, your love of playing and caring for younger children to everything you undertake here at the LJS and beyond. Mazal Tov to you, Cecily, to all your family and friends who have joined you for this morning's Shabbat service. And I'd like to invite you to pop up here again as I present you on behalf of the synagogue